everybody, welcome to another video. Are you ready to chat about some summer knitting? I am, because the sun is out, it's getting warm here, and my stash has quite a few summer skeins in them which I want to use up this year. If you're new here, welcome. My name is Maria and I love to make videos about all things knitting. So if that sounds like your jam, then maybe hit subscribe. It's totally free. But today we are going to talk about summer knits and specifically how we can make them long lasting. Now, I love knitting with all different kinds of fibers. And as we know, plant-based ones have great qualities. They are really breathable, they're moisture absorbing, they feel lightweight on the skin, but they have three really big drawbacks. They're heavy, they're not elastic, and they've got low hold. And that means over time, your knit can start to lose its shape. I've learned the hard way that airy summer design and plant-based yarn doesn't always equal a lasting quality garment. But you know I love making videos about all kinds of things. So I thought there must be a solution to this problem. There must be some formula that you can apply to make the perfect summer knit with a plant-based yarn. So I decided to dive into this topic and I'm going to share my results with you today because yes, the formula exists and we're going to crack it. So get comfortable, get your whip, and let's talk about how we can make our summer projects last summer after summer. Right, so the first thing that we need to consider is garment construction. Many patterns nowadays are designed seamlessly because it avoids loads of finishing work at the end. And it also means that you can try on the garment as you go. But seams are actually really important in knitwear design because they give your garment anchoring points to kind of create a scaffold to offer structural support for the garment. This becomes especially important when using yarns that have low elasticity and hold, like plant-based yarns. Now you might be wondering, what are you talking about? Low hold, low elasticity? Why are plant-based fibers so different from animal-based fibers? Animal fibers have little scales along their fiber strands. If you just grab one of your own hairs, for example, if you go up from the bottom of the hair towards your head, you can feel a resistance. That's just the scales along your hair. The same applies to animal fibers, and these scales kind of hold onto each other when the fibers are lined next to each other. And that's what gives animal fibers a lot more hold and elasticity. Now, plant-based fibers don't have these scales, which means if one fiber strand sits next to the other, they just glide away like oiled spaghetti. And that's why they have all these issues with elasticity and hold. So if we have seams in a garment, they'll help stop the stretching out. The shoulder seams will stop it stretching towards this way, down your shoulder, widening your neckline. The shoulder seams will also give a bit of anchoring to the body. The body seams on the sides will help the body stop widening to the sides. So they are really key in making sure that a garment knitted with a plant-based yarn will last year in, year out. So my tip number one would be to pick a design with seams. But like I just said, many designers love to create seamless designs. So what do we do if we fall in love with something that is seamless and yet we want to use a plant-based yarns? Do we have any options? Lucky we do. First of all, not every kind of construction means that the design will have no structural anchoring support. There are some constructions that offer more structural integrity than others. For example, if you have a drop shoulder design where you need to pick up stitches, that pickup line acts as an anchoring point. So usually along the shoulders and then also where you have your sleeves come out. The other type of construction that offers a bit more structural support is things like saddle shoulders, where you have a block of stitches which you increase around. Now, if you've fallen in love with a raglan design, which inherently has a lot less structural support along those raglan increases, but you really want to use it with a plant-based yarn, then have a look at the basting stitch technique. What you do here is you add an extra purl stitch along where you would like a seam to be. So if you have one center raglan stitch, for example, around which you increase, you could do a purl stitch, your raglan stitch, another purl, and then do your increase. And then once everything is finished, you will mattress stitch along that purl seam so that the purl vanishes and you have kind of an afterthought seam. It means you are basically seaming what's actually a seamless garment, but it's adding that vital structural support that you need. Karen Templar has made a blog post about this technique. I've read about it first on the Sister Mountain website, which also features a really handy step-by-step guide on what you need to do. Everything will be linked down below if you want to have a closer look. But my tip number two would be to add structural support with afterthought seams. You might be wondering, what about round yokes? Round yokes and plant-based yarns, in my opinion, don't go well together. Round yokes have no structural support. They need really rough wool to create a yoke that will sit well and hold for years to come. So plant-based yarns are really not the ones to go for here. Now the weather's turned out so lovely and I fancy sitting out in the garden, so I'll take you with me and we can talk a little bit about stitch patterns. It is just too nice not to be outside today. So let's talk a little bit about stitch patterns within a design. Plant-based fibers are a little bit more dense than animal fibers because they contain more cellulose rather than proteins, and that makes them inherently a little bit more heavy. Noisy airplane. And therefore, I think we also need to factor in stitch patterns when we're thinking about our summer projects, because some stitch patterns are really yarn hungry, which means they're adding more weight to the finished garment, and that means more strain on those fibers. Anything that creates a tight weave and dense looking fabric falls into this category. So for example, moss stitch, any kind of garter stitch variation, fisherman's rib, anything that you could really find in a Gansey sweater, because they were made to be as wind and waterproof as possible. So they have lots of dense stitch patterns in them. So my third tip is to stick with really simple stitch patterns like a stockinette stitch. And while we're on the topic of weight, also consider the overall length of your garment and the sleeve options. The longer you make it, again, the heavier it'll be. And maybe it's better to choose something like a top which doesn't have any sleeves, which doesn't create any more weight on the neckline and on the yoke and pulls it down horizontally. And maybe think about having a crop top instead of a full length, because again, it has less weight in the body. So my fourth tip would be to consider tops and crop versions to keep the garment as light in weight as possible. Now the last part of this equation will be about the fiber mixes and the strand construction. So let's head back inside and look at some yarns. Now, yarn companies are very much aware of the problem around plant-based fibers and their low memory and elasticity. And they've come up with a few solutions to help combat these problems. The first one is to mix wool and plant-based fibers together to get the best of both worlds. You have the elasticity and hold of wool with the breathability and moisture absorbance of plant-based yarns. As an example, you have Knitting for Olive's cotton merino, Drops make a cotton merino as well, or this organic trio from Herjigarns, which has 50% wool, 25% cotton and 25% silk in it. Those are all great options for your summer knit to ensure that it lasts summer after summer. You can also just try and experiment and get a purely plant-based yarn like this linen one here and a wool yarn like this wool and alpaca one and blend them together by holding them together. Of course, only works if you get the right gauge with it. So my fifth tip would be to look at the fiber composition, and if you can, choose something that has wool and plant-based fibers in it to get the best of both worlds. Something else that yarn companies do to create a bit more elasticity in plant-based yarns is to construct them in a chain net way. This is a little bit like an I-cord, and because it has a hollow core, it adds a lot of loft to it, but that also adds a lot of elasticity to it. So my next tip would be to maybe look for a plant-based yarn that has one of these chain net style constructions. Right, so now that we've talked about all the different variables that make up a great summer garment, let's look at the actual maths. So first up, we're going to look at garment construction and we're going to add the stitch pattern to it. Note that this is in brackets, so we're going to have to look at that first. And then we multiply in the yarn fiber composition, and that gives us our wonderful lasting summer garment. So really, it is only a few things that you need to consider when you want to make your next summer garment to ensure that even though it's made with a plant-based fiber, which is lovely and breathable, you're going to enjoy it year after year because it's not going to stretch out. So that's it for me today. I hope you enjoyed this video. It was a little bit more lighthearted than maybe some of the other things that I've done, but I have certainly really enjoyed making it for you. And if you want to support my channel, then the best thing that you can do is just click on the next video that YouTube suggests to you. Maybe leave a comment and tell me what summer designs you love to knit and what's on your needles right now. And I want to thank you for spending time with me, and I hope to see you again soon in another video. Bye guys!